And it took me a while to really recognize that there was a competitive advantage that I had in the workplace, because even though I was scared, I would figure out a way to do it anyway. And that opens up doors. It's like there's so many things that become possible. Like I used to have really bad social anxiety.
Hmm.
And early in my tech career, I realized that was going to be a career limiting problem.
Right.
And so I decided to find some way of somebody being able to help me to unwind my social anxiety as much as was possible. Now, years later, I like public speaking and I talk to strangers all the time. And nobody would say that I have social anxiety anymore.
I create clear thinking and decisive leaders who can amplify their influence. Contact me to find out how I can help you or your organisation. And today our guest is Bill Lennan. How are you doing, Bill?
I'm good, thanks. I've got coffee. The weather's beautiful. I can't complain.
Fantastic. So, what do you enjoy telling your friends about?
Oh my God. I like to brag about my kids and how they're doing career-wise and in college. Um, I oftentimes people ask me on the professional side about the work that I've done, software teams, and how to make them work more effectively, and that's always interesting and fun. Um, I know probably more than I should about mental health and how our heads work, um, and uh, and lately also I'm playing with the regenerative farming project. So
What's
this is
that?
what happens with ADHD.
What is that? The farming,
What's what?
the farming project. What's all that?
Oh, so the farming project, historically, you know, up until the last 100 years, people did farming where they had crop rotation, where they had animals mixed in with the plants they were growing, and basically that's a natural fertilizer, as well as weed inhibitor, and it also keeps the topsoil in better shape.
Mm-hmm.
And when we started doing big business farming, most of it happening right after World War II, um, we we changed the way that we were doing farming. And in the long run, what's happened is a significant degradation in the soil, and also a big reliance on petroleum-based fertilizers and weed killers. And now there's a movement that's been going on for probably 20 years now, at least in the US, to go back to these regenerative farms. And I like having control of my food supply.
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, and because I find that when I grow my own tomatoes, they taste better.
Yeah.
And when I grow, my own lettuce, it tastes better. And when I spices, it tastes better. And um, and so yeah, that's what we're started working on. We got a piece of land. We're working on infrastructure right now, and yeah, it's a fun project.
Sounds especially useful. So thank you for that.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Having food is sooner or later it's a thing, right?
Well, the thing is having good food, and that's the problem.
Right.
All these charts and stuff that they have made about, this is what the quality of your food and everything was what, 50s, 60s? And that's when the quality of food was better. So it's a
Yeah.
bit worrying to think just how depleted, and we don't even realize it. So
Right. Right.
all power for you. So tell us a bit more about you and what you do.
So professionally, what I'm doing now is I started a company called 40% Better, and we're a leadership training program. I've been running software teams for 20 plus years. The thing that's been interesting about them is that we keep doing things people say is impossible. My work has helped everybody from Google and Walmart to local restaurants and small startups. So I've kind of run the gamut. And I realized a few years in that I was doing things because the way my teams were operating, that other people weren't doing. And then I started having executives and peers ask me, how come your teams perform so well? And I didn't know how to explain it until about 5 years ago. And that's when my now partner interviewed me and then said, "Oh, I know what you're doing." And I said, "Great, you got to tell me, because I'm doing it, but I really don't know what I'm doing." Right? Well, it's a little bit of a problem when you can't explain why you're successful. But she actually gave me language to break down what I was doing. And so now with 40PB, we teach other people to replicate our success. And what makes us different is we're very behavioral. I love Simon Sinek's philosophical perspective about leaders eat last and leaders take care of their people. But what do you do on a day-to-day basis? What's the actual behavior that someone needs to take to make that happen? And so the big aha that my partner provided was, here's specifically the behaviors that I'm doing. Here's the mental models that I have that are driving those behaviors. That allow my teams to operate so much more effectively.
Yeah, I like that. I mean, that whole thing about speaking last is self-evident, isn't it? Because especially if you haven't got a group that's very strong, they're going to assume that if you're saying something, then that you want them to agree with you, and they're going to follow that.
Right. Yeah, and it's the way that we architected this, and the breakdown is that there's 5 pillars of behavior for team leads. And the whole point of those 5 pillars really is to build trust with the team, because fundamentally, I don't think teams in any context trust their leadership. There's all these stories we've heard about how poorly people are treated at work. And so when we go to work at a company, we kind of expect that. And when you don't expect to be treated well, you're not doing your best work. The flip side to it is when I build trust with a team and I help them to be doing the kind of work they want to be doing, and they're intrinsically motivated, there's 2 really big benefits. Number one, they're happy, which is awesome for a variety of reasons. But number 2, they're much more productive because they're doing what they want to be doing. And that's a huge win all the way around, and it makes my executives happy.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. All right then. So, what would make your executives unhappy?
Typically, it's poor team performance. Their poor productivity. Years ago, I was at a company, and the day that I started, the CTO did the onboarding, and he's walking me through all the stuff, all the protocols. At the end of the meeting, he goes, "By the way, I hate to tell you this, but I'm assigning you to the worst software team we have, and we've been trying to improve their performance for a number of years, and we haven't been able to do anything. Good luck." And yeah,
no, great way to motivate you for success.
That was, and I, as I walked out of the room, I thought, wow, this is going to be a fun challenge. This is going to be interesting. And that's one of those things that happens that I think executives oftentimes take for granted because they don't know what's possible. And now the cool thing about that story is 6 months later, I'm sitting at my desk doing some stuff. CTO comes over, taps me on their shoulder and says, "Hey, can we have a private conversation for a minute?" And I'm like, "Okay, sure." Go into his office, he closes the door, and he says, "Okay, so what have you done to your team?" And I said, "What do you mean?" And he said, "I gave you the worst performing team in the company. You now have the best performing team in the company. Their coding throughput has gone up by 40%, and they all seem to be happier. What have you done?" And I said, well, I don't know how to explain it, because at that point in time I didn't. I said, I just take really good care of my people. And he said, well, I have been trying for years to make that happen, and I don't know how to. So when you figure it out, you have to tell me. And I said, yes, sir, be happy to teach you whenever I figure out what it is that I'm doing. And so now I do, and that's what we do.
So what would you say is the formula for doing that then?
So if you can understand, here's a set of problems that team leads have. The first one is they're not trusted. And it's not their fault, and it's not the executive's fault. It's that everybody hears horror stories about company behavior and leadership behavior, and they go work at a company and they don't trust, right? So the team lead has to be thinking about, how do you build trust with the team? There's a few areas to focus in that I think really help. One of them is helping people advance their careers in whatever direction they want to go. And so I always have dialogues with people on my teams about, what do you want to do next? And sometimes on day one, they say, oh, I want to whatever. And I'm like, great, let's help you make that happen. Sometimes it takes them 2 years. And I always let them know they have the freedom. And if you want to stay right where you are, beautiful, that's totally fine. But they always have the freedom to say, hey, Bill, I think I want to explore whatever it is, right? I don't care what it is. Knowing they have the freedom, even if they don't take advantage of it, and seeing how I'm operating with other people on the team helps them to trust me more. Helping them to do the kind of work that they like doing and operating in that area of intrinsic motivation, they trust me more and they give me better work, right? And they're happier because they're doing what they want to be doing. And I don't really care what they have been doing historically. If they say what they want to change and do something different, then I'm like, great, let's figure out how to make it happen, right? I think going to bat for your team, for the executives, is really important. And so I regularly go to executives and ask for funding for things that will help my team operate better. And I've gotten really good at framing it in such a way that the executives say yes. And that helps my team be more productive. And they operate better, and they understand that when they've got a problem, I want to solve it for them. And again, they trust me more. I get to hear more vulnerable conversations from them. I get better thinking from them, and we perform better. And, it's a virtuous cycle, because now the executives are happier. My team's performing better. We're putting out more code, whatever it is. And then we get better projects. They're like, hey, Bill, there's this thing that, we that needs to be done. And would your team like to have this project? And I'm like, well, yeah, let's talk about it. What is it? And then I go talk to the team, and the fact that I include them in the decision-making process and the conversation, it builds trust.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
So I'm curious about your philosophy about teams need voluntary discomfort, and that's an important leadership attribute. Can we talk about that?
Of course, yeah, definitely. So the way to frame this is, I have a lot of emotional resilience skills that I started learning when I was a teenager, and it was because I got into sports. Specifically, I got really interested in surfing. I mostly grew up in Hawaii, and getting to the beach and going surfing and learning how to do that was challenging from multiple angles, including emotionally. There was, to get better at surfing, you have to do things that scare you, especially in Hawaii. And I wanted to get better. And so I learned how to manage my fear and how to nibble my way into doing things that scared me. And that approach, I abstracted into the workplace. And so one of the things that I found out was, I was doing things that I kind of took for granted that I was doing, but when I would talk with peers about it, oftentimes they would say, I can't do that. That's too scary. And it took me a while to really recognize that there was a competitive advantage that I had in the workplace, because even though I was scared, I would figure out a way to do it anyway. And that opens up doors. It's like there's so many things that become possible. Like I used to have really bad social anxiety. And early in my tech career, I realized that was going to be a career limiting problem.
Right.
And so I decided to find some way of somebody being able to help me to unwind my social anxiety as much as was possible. And I didn't really know what the end would look like. Now years later, I like public speaking and I talk to strangers all the time. And nobody would say that I have social anxiety anymore. And I nibbled away at the problem. I did a series of things that were a little bit uncomfortable. Starting conversations with strangers that lasted 2 minutes, going to 5-minute networking events, going to 15-minute networking events, doing small presentations for my software team, doing bigger presentations for multiple software teams, presenting to executives. But I kept nibbling away at my fear and my emotional discomfort. And I realized along the way that it's only scary the first 10 times you do it. And really the worst is the first one. And so if I can make the first, whatever it is, manageable discomfort, then the next time around, it's going to be easier and then easier and easier. And then what's the next level up that I need to get to, right? What's the next thing, right? So my social anxiety was a stack of discomforts. Each one was a little bit harder than the last one, but also because the last one became easy, the next one was just another little small layer. It's kind of the way that we teach math, right? We teach, like, everybody knows that 7 times 3 is 21. We get there because we all use the same system of a bunch of little tiny steps where we all started by adding single digit numbers or even counting, right? How many blocks are on the ground? 1, 2, 3. And so with emotional discomfort, it's all about how do I break it down? And I've replicated this with a bunch of people that I've coached privately. How do I break it down to a level that they can do? It's emotionally uncomfortable, but it's manageable for them, and get them to be okay with that. And then what's the next level? What's the next level? What's the next level?
Okay, that makes sense. Let's listen to a quick advert.
The Maverick Paradox. Judith Germain is an author, speaker, consultant, mentor, and trainer, and the leading authority on Maverick leadership. She is the founder of the Maverick Paradox, which supports organizations to enhance their leadership capabilities and to help business owners develop and grow their businesses. Judith enables individuals, business owners, and organizations to improve their impact and influence. She is also HR Zone's leadership columnist, and her expert opinion has appeared in national, international, and trade press.
Welcome back to the Maverick Paradox. This is the podcast for the pathologically curious. So I can certainly see how that would work on an individual basis, but how would you do that how would you get voluntary discomfort in a team to move forward? Because I know it's easy to make the team discomfort, but actually make them voluntarily want to. Tell me how that would work.
So it's back to intrinsic motivation again and trust, right? And so part of this is on day one, if I'm going into a brand new team, I can't, right? They're not going to be uncomfortable because they don't know me. They don't trust me. I haven't put enough effort into them understanding me and how everything works, my drivers and the benefits for them yet, right? So as they build trust and they're doing what they want to be doing, then we have this interesting opportunity, this interesting challenge. And people actually, but at least in my experience, if you frame a challenge for them in a way that they see it as, number one, achievable, and 2, exciting, and 3, having some kind of reward, they'll go for it. Right? People run marathons and they do triathlons and they write books that they've never written before. They learn how to code. They learn how to cook. Like they build houses, right? People do all kinds of things that are challenging because they see it as achievable, even though it's going to be hard and it's going to be emotionally uncomfortable. And they have to trust whoever's instigating. What's the catalyst, right? That's getting them to do this. And so when I've got the trust and I can frame it that way, then it's really easy because it's just a natural evolution of how we've been progressing. It's just the next level. And people don't say, "Oh my God, that's way too big a leap." Right. But it's because of the stuff I've done before, the groundwork that I've set, where they're like, "Oh, well, of course, this is a great challenge. This will be fun to do."
Yeah. I talk about pacing people through that change. So it's really important, especially when you're doing change initiatives, that you say, this is how it's going to be. And I often, because I used to run HR departments, when you get to this point, this is what's going to happen. When you get to this point, people are going to hate you, but that's okay, because when you get to this point, they're going to love you again. And to get from the hate to the love, you've got to do this, this, and that. So when people get to that point, they go, oh yeah, that's when she said people are going to not, our friends won't go to lunch with us at the moment because they're angry.
Right,
that kind of thing.
Yeah, yeah.
I totally get that. What's your 40 PB approach? What's that?
So that's the leadership program, right? And so the way here's the way that I break it down. So we found 5 pillars that I consistently was doing that most other people don't do. The first pillar is communication. You have to be able to be really curious and inquisitive, and you have to have really good persuasion skills. Most team leads aren't inquisitive enough, number one, and their persuasion skills are horrible. And that has ripple effects, right? That they don't do things that they should be doing for their team. The second thing is having emotional resilience skills and knowing how to manage our emotions and our own brain chemistry so we can go do the thing that's uncomfortable, or we can manage our stress, and we can explain all this stuff to our teams, right? And help them understand why it's important that they do things that are good for their equanimity. The third one is mental models. I acquired a set of mental models that are very self-empowering as a team lead. And one of the things that I found, and really I got to credit my partner for pointing this out, is that this stack of mental models that I have, very few other team leads have. Right. We'll find executives that are carrying those mental models, but they don't share them with their team leads. They assume the team lead has the same mental model that they do. That's almost never true. And so there's a big friction there because the executive thinks the team leads all understand the world the way that they do, that the team leads don't, and the team leads think the executives are thinking the way that they are, and so it's a disconnect. The fourth part of this is understanding power dynamics. Team leads have a huge amount of power inside of organizations. Number one, they don't understand that they have that power available. And number two, they don't know how to use it effectively. And my experience, and one of my early mentors, who was a founder of a company that I worked at, actually very explicitly pointed this out to me, that as the guy running the software teams, I had the power to do all kinds of things inside the company, even beyond his level of power, because I was running the people that were actually building the product that we were delivering to our clientele. Mm-hmm. And that gave me the ability to knock on anybody's door in the company, figuratively, and go and talk with them and have a conversation at any point in time to better understand the business and to better understand how to help my team operate more effectively, to help the business operate more effectively. And that nothing was above my pay grade. And also the fifth one is to make all this stuff into habits.
Right.
And so, when we work with people, we're giving them the fundamental frameworks of those 5 pillars. And then it's okay. And here's the thing you need to do, start doing now. Number 1 is schedule one-on-ones with everybody on your team once a week and find out what their frictions are in their life. I don't care, whatever it is, doesn't matter. Their computer's too slow. The lighting doesn't work in their cube. When they're working from home, they don't have good internet, whatever it is. I don't care what it is, but giving them a place to dump and vent their frustration, and then hopefully being able to solve it for them is incredibly valuable. And that's, baseline. You can start doing that on day 1.
Yeah. Gotcha. So how do you help them to think differently? Because certainly I'm all about helping people to think differently. So I'm curious to see how you do it.
Yeah. So starting off from the place of mental models, I've found to be really effective, because mental models or beliefs are what everybody operates from. Right. And that's the box that you live inside of. You can't go outside of your belief structure. And so being able to have somebody give you a different set of mental models and a different belief structure, it opens a window, and you're like, oh, wait a minute, that's possible? How do you do that? Right. And then it's, oh, here's the skills you need to go do that. Here's the communication. Here's the emotional resilience skills. Here's the understanding of the power dynamics. Whatever it happens to be, it's taking it from being just a belief or a mental model into actually pragmatic, practical. Here's how I do it on a day-to-day basis, and here's how you make it reality. We use metaphors a lot. I grew up playing in the water, right? I swam competitively, a lot of years surfing, water skiing, windsurfing, diving. For me, the water's a playground, and I've raised my kids that exact same way. Mm-hmm. We've gone on whitewater rafting trips where there's been somebody in the boat who was terrified of the water. Mm-hmm. And we got dumped out. Boat hit a rock, everybody fell in the water. My kids and I are laughing about it. We think it's hilarious and fun. And there's a woman who is completely losing her mind. She's 5 feet from us, same river, same dump, same everything, completely different experience of the water, because she thinks the water's trying to kill her. We think the water's a playground. We collect our stuff. We get her and everybody else out of the water. We can't wait to get back in the boat. She's trying to figure out if there's a way she can hike out of this canyon. It's the mental model is the boundary of your world. Her mental model was the water's trying to kill me. Now, our mental model is the water's a playground, and we have a lot of skills in the water. That's what makes the mental model actionable, right? And so we start with the mental model, and then we're making it actionable by teaching people all the skills they need to do the thing, right? And here's how you break it down into the baby step, right? When you're the starting point is one-on-ones and learning about friction. So schedule the one-on-ones, and then ask people how they're doing, and anything that they want to talk about that they think is in the way of where they are right now and how they could operate more effectively at work. Whatever they say is fair game. Just write it down. And that's it. That's all you get. That's your homework, right? And it's very behavioral. And when it's kind of like having a therapist in a way, oftentimes people go to therapists just to vent. And the fact that somebody can hear them is what they really need in the moment. And sometimes people will vent to me about stuff going on that's friction for them. And then at the end of the meeting, I'm like, okay, do you want me to help you with this? And they're like, no, I just needed to complain about it. I'm like, oh, okay, do you feel better? And they're like, yep, that was it. That's all I needed. Because I can't tell my spouse this or whatever, right? I'm like, okay, cool. Awesome. I'm glad I could help. And sometimes it's more pragmatic. They're like, I'm really having a hard time getting to our first morning meeting because the delivery time that I have for my kids at school doesn't give me enough time to get home and then get on my computer. Oh, well, okay, great. I can change the meeting time. Not a problem. How much later do you want it? Is half an hour enough time? And they're like, yeah, that's more than enough time. Great. Now you have time to get home, get out of the car, make a cup of coffee or cup of tea, whatever, and then hop online and we can do the meeting and you're relaxed about it. Doesn't matter to me either way. And away we go. So it's the starting point is all about finding and removing friction and having behaviorally, what is that? What do you have to do to make that happen?
Mm-hmm. Makes a lot of sense. All right, Bill, it's been fantastic having you on the show.
Thank you.
And
great questions.
Thank you. That's good to know, because sometimes you think, what do they think when I just come up with these questions? So it's good to know that you like them. So that's good.
Yeah, it was good. It was very good. Yeah.
Thank you.
Good leading of the witness. I appreciate it.
And thank you out there for tuning in to the Maverick Paradox podcast. I'm Judith Germain, your host, and I hope you've enjoyed today's conversation.
The Maverick Paradox Magazine. The Maverick Paradox Magazine is for the pathologically curious. Written by a swagger of socialized mavericks who are divergent thinkers, the magazine tackles the biggest issues affecting maverick leaders today. You might be a business owner or a leader within an organization who wants to have your thinking challenged, to be exposed to a diversity of thought, or to learn from diverse experts in their fields. If so, the Maverick Paradox Magazine is for you. Join the swagger at themaverickparadox.com and engage in the conversation.